Hey everyone, pleasure to meet you all. My name is Chris Bennett. I'm the CEO of Wonderschool. Wonderschool started, well, I'm originally from Miami, Florida. My parents are immigrants from Honduras, and I went to a home-based childcare program as a kid, and it was pretty cool. The woman who ran it was a Cuban immigrant named Yoli, had a really great experience in the program. And, I eventually went to elementary school, was the first in my family to go to college and graduate from college. And afterwards, I worked in a private equity firm doing investments. And I really wanted to figure out how to do something that I was passionate about and something that I was excited about. And I really wasn't excited about like investing. And so I actually tried to be a doctor and explored being a doctor, and then realized that being a doctor really didn't make a lot of sense for me. And then I eventually made it out to Silicon Valley because I was really interested in technology startups and getting involved in startups. And about 5 years into being in the Valley, I kept hearing from my friends that they were having a hard time finding childcare. And so I, helped I actually went to go visit some childcare programs to understand what was going on in the market. And what I found is that a lot of the providers who were running these businesses didn't really have a strong business background, and we could support them with that. And so we, helped these childcare providers improve their marketing, help them get more enrollments. And then we realized that there was an opportunity to then help people start their own program. So I actually started a program. I found a teacher, found a home in Berkeley and in Los Angeles, and essentially helped 2 programs get started. And it was really exciting. And we went from the idea portion of starting the program all the way to helping the programs get full. And so once we did that, then we decided, okay, the next step is how do we take this idea and make it to the masses? So we started creating childcare programs, started creating tons of childcare programs. And now we're at this point where we've built this company. It's like an Airbnb for childcare, where we help an individual get started on our platform, get enrollments, and then operate in perpetuity using the Wonderschool platform. That's sort of that's the background story of Wonderschool.
Fantastic. So, I mean, one of the things that we mentioned here in the intro is that you've been able to raise a bit of capital to support the growth and expansion of the program. Tell us how you went about doing that and what some of the learning lessons have been there.
Yeah, so we raised about $50 million to date. We've raised from firms like First Round Capital, Andreessen Horowitz, and Goldman Sachs. And to raise the money, we did a good amount of fundraising to go out and raise. And in each stage, when you're raising, there's different things different milestones you have to hit. So in the seed stage, you have to get to the point where you've created an idea and people are interested in the product. And then after that, for Series A, you have to have a form of traction. And then for Series B, you need to have even more traction and more people utilizing the product. And so to fundraise, there's a whole process where you create a presentation, you get feedback from your investors and from your team, and then you take it to market. And then you go and get interest from investors. And then once you've gotten enough interest, you're able to raise a round. And that's what we've done. Hey, Jonathan, you're on mute.
Thanks. Can you chat a little bit about the process of building a team and how you went from, I imagine, it was you and the first person that you hired on the programming side to scaling into, I'm sure you have operations, finance, programming, HR. How is that process rolled out for you?
Yeah, so we have a pretty big team at Wonderschool. We have a finance team, an engineering team, a marketing team, a sales team. We have a product team, we have a design team. So it's very, very complex. And, when we started off, we were primarily just product. So engineering and design and product management. And we've grown the business now to having all of these different functions, business operations. And, the way recruiting works is you go out and you start to tell people about the product, about the company, and then you work with them to, learn about the business and then join the company. We actually have a recruiting team that manages all of our recruiting, and they go out and start recruiting folks. Jonathan, I'm curious that this class, is this an undergrad class or is this a grad school class?
So kind of both. The Zip Launchpad at SDSU has undergrad, postgrad, faculty, and staff. So it's anyone that's affiliated with the university that is in the startup stage, the kind of in the entrepreneurial pathway.
Okay, cool. That makes sense.
Yep. Brad, talk about, as you mentioned, your company's growth. I think one of the questions that a lot of people start to experience when they do go from 1 to 2 or 1 to 200 people is creating culture. And a big part of that in today's age is DE&I practices. And how have you guys approached both creating a company culture that is healthy and that people are drawn to, and especially now in the great resignation world of staff retention, which is very challenging, moving into something that is actually additive and valuable for everyone that wants to be there and a part of the team?
Yeah, so the way we think about it is, the company's pretty diverse. Being a Black founder, it starts at the top, and there's not very many Black founders out there, so that definitely helps with just the recruitment process. And then the leadership team we have at Wonderschool is really diverse. I actually don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but pretty sure there's more women on it than men, and it's about equal. And there's a lot of racial diversity and gender and age diversity as well on the leadership team. And then when the other thing we think about is when we're recruiting for roles, like being pretty specific on what level of diversity that we want to have for that role. And then once people are in the organization, we really focus on making sure people feel safe in the organization, are able to do their best work. So we talk about race openly at Wonderschool. We talk about gender openly. We talk about it in our one-on-ones. I talk about it with folks. And we don't act like it's not there, and we don't act like the experience that everyone has is the same. And we acknowledge that. And then from a that's sort of how we foster it right now. And then the other thing we do, I've been thinking about this. The other thing we do is we do a lot of pulse surveys with the team. So we will ask the team questions on a weekly or every month basis, and getting a sense. No, we do it every month or every quarter, where we ask the team for feedback about their experience in the company, and then we make changes based on that feedback from the team. And then we also do this thing called All Hands, and at All Hands, everyone in the company is able to join, and we do Q&A. We talk about questions folks have, and we can provide transparency and answers so that folks understand sort of how things are going within the business. That's sort of how we handle that, Jonathan.
Great. If I can take a few years kind of steps back, everyone in our program is 2 months to 2 years into their startup pathway. Most have not achieved meaningful launch yet. They're in stages of launch. So talk a little bit about that phase in your career. When you went from having this idea, you saw a need and you had a solution, and how you really kind of activated that and turned it into something that grew into Wonderschool.
Yeah, that was a while ago. That was 2017, and I don't know. I'm not a parent, but I feel like it's similar to being a parent when you're like looking at your 5-year-old kid, and you remember when they were 2 months, 3 months, and they only know what's going on for them in this very moment, right? So like I'll be in leadership team meetings, or I'll be meeting with the team, and everyone is like so focused on the present. But I remember when it was me. I actually started the company like in the room next to this, like, so it's like, it's really, it's really funny. But yeah, when I think about starting companies, one of the big things I learned is like, do something you're passionate about. Find something you're passionate about, find something that you are willing to like not quit on, because you're gonna have to, there's gonna be lots of moments where you want to quit. And so that's one thing. Second is, yeah, you gotta you have to build something people want. And oftentimes people think people want things that you got to go to talk to customers to figure out what they want. And so you should be spending the majority of your time talking to customers, figuring out what they want. And I think like I think Steve Jobs or Ford, yeah, like Ford guy, he made that statement. If we asked people what they wanted, we would have made faster horses. I don't know if you guys heard that story. But I think it's I think it's kind of stupid, because it's like, it's led all these people to think that like you shouldn't listen to what customers want. But it's so easy. You just really like ask customers what they want. And then you got to like use your own intuition to take that information and figure out what to build for them. And what's cool is that's what we still do today. Like, that's what you're going to do all the time. Like, figure out what customers want, use your intuition, and figure out what to build for them, show it to them, and then keep doing that. And yeah, so that's what I think about that. When, like, for all of you who are in the early stages of your company, make sure you're building something people want, and go to customers and figure out if they want it. And then once you've got that, you got to start figuring out a business model. So how do you charge for it? How do you scale it? But building something customers want's the hardest part.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, Chris. You know, we have, to a certain sense in Zip, operationalized the process of getting from idea to launch, but really we know that there's no one way to do it. So we have a portion of it, and we call it sprints 1 and 2 in L1, where we're asking people what they want, essentially. You know, we're validating our problem and solution. And I can't tell enough to young entrepreneurs that this is the most important part, right? Like, there's this founder philosophy or founder syndrome where we think we've got the best idea in the world, and if people don't want it or get it, then they're the idiots, right? And we've got, you know, but I really appreciate you kind of overemphasizing the importance of listening to your customer, not assuming that you know what they want more than they do.
Yeah, I sit in rooms with my team and we're talking and we're like, it should be this way. I'm like, guys, what the F do we know? Like, just go put it in front of customers. Let the customer decide. Right. And if we're gonna, if we're gonna debate it, let's debate it with the customer, not with each other. What do we know? Like, at this stage. So, you know, that's sort of how I think about it.
Agreed. We have a question from Lizzie here, and I encourage you all to throw some of your questions in here, and I'll kind of pepper them in with mine. Lizzie asks, what progress or changes do you see for Wonderschool in the next 10 years?
You know, our goal is to continue to scale the business. But our strategy is pretty straightforward. You know, we want to create more childcare. We want to live in a world where no one says there's a childcare problem. That's pretty much it. Like, there's enough childcare within 5 minutes of everyone on this call. And, you know, and we go to any city in America. There used to be a time when you would fly into a small town and there wouldn't be a taxi, or you would be on a college campus and you wouldn't know how to get a taxi. You have to call some random number and go through a terrible experience. Now we can all press a button and get access to taxis and transportation within minutes. It's amazing. So we want to live in a world where that is the same for childcare. And so, you know, when I think about what changes, just we want more adoption of our technology, more people using childcare, and that's what we're focused on.
Great. Diving into the solution here, you know, I talk a lot to young founders about improvement versus invention versus innovation. You know, childcare is something that's existed for a very long time. Tell us how you took a concept that was fairly established and probably there was not a lot of innovation for a particularly long amount of time, and turn it into a meaningful startup really that solved a problem?
You know, we kind of took a fresh approach to it. There's sort of benefits to not being an insider, you know, like where you can see things with fresh eyes, and approach and come up with solutions that other people haven't thought about. And that's sort of what we've done at Wonderschool. We weren't insiders. We've become insiders now. But you know, when we were thinking about childcare, we're like, this could be so much better. Like, let's reinvent this. Like, think about Tesla, for example. You know, Elon didn't have. He wasn't a Ford executive for years. He came into it with a fresh set of eyes and built this incredible car company based on first principles that, you know, make sense to him and make sense to consumers today. And that's sort of how we were thinking about Wonderschool when we launched it. Like, how can we think about this with a fresh set of eyes? And so that's allowed us to be really innovative and build what we've built today.
Thank you. We have a question from Ali here, who asks, what have you learned about yourself during your entrepreneurial journey? And what do you know now that you wish you had known when you started?
So, you know, one of the things I've learned is that, you know, making sure that you're in a really good place is really important for you being able to be like a successful entrepreneur. So, being an entrepreneur takes so much of your mental energy, and you really have to be in the right space. So like working out daily, going to like therapy, having a healthy relationships with your partners, your friends, your family. All of that stuff actually makes it easier for you to be an entrepreneur. It's really wild. And that's actually like one of like the biggest like takeaways that I've had. And then, you know, the other thing I've learned is that like persistence and grit is really important. I just got a call from one of our competitors today that they told me they're like quitting and going in a different direction, you know? And I was actually pretty shocked. But then I realized, like, you know, it's really hard to keep going. and you know, and that it kind of goes back to the idea of do something you're passionate about, because if you're doing something you're passionate about, like, you can't imagine not continuing to do it.
Yeah. You mentioned a little bit about like knowing thyself and therapy and being crystal clear. Talk about how you work effectively with partners at the highest level. I don't know if you have a co-founder or, you know, the people on your executive team. How do you build both healthy and happy relationships, but also productive and effective ones?
Yeah, so we do a lot of I'm really into like direct feedback. So I try to tell people like directly what's going on, and I expect them to do the same for me. And so I'm really into like telling the truth. And the truth, you know, one thing is to lie, but another is to like withhold what you're thinking. And I try to get everyone to say what they're thinking. And I try to say what I'm thinking. And what that allows for is, I also have this belief that everyone on this call is reasonable. And so when you disagree with somebody, that likely means that you have information they don't have, or they have information you don't have. And so I'm all about like giving each other the information to figure out how someone has gotten to that point of view, or sharing my information so that they can understand how I got to my point of view. And after you go through that and you're not able to agree, then, you know, someone needs to make a call, usually the person who's responsible for the outcome. And, you know, you test it and see what ends up happening. So yeah, when I think about my relationship with my leadership team, you know, there's just a lot of open dialogue, a lot of like cut the bullshit and get to the point. And I think that that leads to pretty healthy relationship where people know where each other are coming from. Another thing I've learned is that trust is really important, and building trust over Zoom is actually pretty hard. So like getting and meeting people in person and hanging out with them in person is pretty important. And then the other thing is you got to be consistent. Consistency drives trust. So if you reward people who do, if you consistently reward people for the same actions, or let people know they're not doing well for the same actions, that's when people are able to trust you because they know what to expect from you. If you're like all over the place, it really scares people because they don't know what to expect. And so that's another thing I've learned.
Talking a little bit about the challenges of the pandemic, which I'm sure has affected your industry significantly, both on the tech side, on the back end, and how you operate your business, and on the childcare end. Tell us how you have been able to build a team through the digital age of people wanting or not wanting to go back into an office. And I imagine a team that's fairly dispersed. Or tell us how the operations look for you guys.
Yeah, so our team's fully remote. The pandemic led us to change our business model, and that's been really successful for us. And now that things are opening back up, you know, we have multiple business lines, so it's going to be pretty interesting. But as you all know, when the pandemic hit, people started to, you know, go indoors, take their kids out of childcare, really focus on keeping COVID out of their homes. And so that led to real life businesses like Wonderschool sort of needed to think about different ways to grow, which we've done. And now that things are opening up again, I don't know if this is a controversial thing to say, but it almost feels like COVID's over at this point, right? Like most people who are boosted are boosted, and people who don't want to get vaccinated, they've made their choices. But you know, most places I'm going into, no one's wearing masks anymore. Only place you have to wear a mask is really like federally mandated places like planes and airports. But even that that's probably going to change soon too. And so we're starting to prepare for things going back to normal, which is really, really exciting. And also interesting because, you know, we've all changed during this time where we've embraced remote work. We live in places we didn't live 2 years ago. And so, you know, as a company, we're just going to spend a lot of time trying to make sense of what's the new state of the world. But you know, the future is really bright for Wonderschool because we're really positioned for any sort of work environment and living environment.
How do you, Chris, prioritize and visualize the expansion of Wonderschool, especially as it, you know, beyond just scale, but comes to new business channels, new initiatives, new kind of innovations that work parallel to what you're doing? I like to think of it, I talk to founders about the vital few versus the compelling many. You know, thinking about, I had a team, not to put anyone on blast here, that had a highly technical kind of hardware. And one of the things that was written into their business plan was also selling t-shirts with their brand on it. And I said, well, actually, you're B2B. Like, nobody cares about your brand, no offense. That's probably not where you should be putting your energy as a young founder and startup that has finite amount of resources and time and energy. So how do you prioritize that work?
Prioritize what specifically?
Where you want to grow and how you want to grow.
Oh, well, you know, I look at markets, and I try to understand what markets are going to grow, how to like penetrate markets. It's a lot of strategy, really into strategy. And so
and if you want to do, sorry to cut you off here, but like if you were to say we should do this other thing that's aligned and parallel, but not the core function of Wonderschool, is that something that you've butted up against?
That can be very dangerous. You might as well start a different company sometimes, you know, like Elon as an example. You know, he didn't start his solar panel company within Tesla. He started it separately. Like, um, so if they have different like missions and they have different metrics, it might make sense to make it a separate company. But what I like to think of it is like, can you build on top of what you already have? So, Amazon started as a bookstore, but then they realized they could sell digital books, or they realized they could sell pretty much any physical good after starting with books. So I think about that with childcare. It's like, okay, we're already doing childcare. What are other things we can do with this? So maybe we can work with employers and help employers get access to childcare. That's a different revenue line. It's a different team, but it's built on the foundation of childcare. So that's how I like to think about it.
I have a question from Carlin here, who, if I can call Carlin out for a sec, had a son 3 days ago and is also a Black founder and entrepreneur. So congrats to Carlin. Yeah, the birth of his new boy. And Carlin asks, yeah, buddy, what was your customer discovery process like, and how did you identify the pain points?
So the way it worked is the business way Wonderschool got started is we're like, we want to do something in childcare. Like, let's build a Yelp for childcare. And then we're like, oh, we don't know if that's a big enough market. So we didn't do that. And then we were like, childcare providers need help with their business. So we started talking to childcare providers. And what we learned was that if we wanted to help them with their business, we needed to help them with marketing. And so I actually went into a childcare program and was the head of marketing for a childcare program for free. And through that, I was able to discover all of these opportunities and problems. And then what I did is I actually started a childcare program myself. And through that, went through the licensing process and went through all of these things. And I realized that there's all these challenges and opportunities there. And that's effectively was my customer discovery process. And well, I first figured out what the problems were. I figured out what the pain points were that way. And then to figure out like how to acquire, then I actually started going to customers and asking them if they were interested in, I like to like create a solution, like almost like a landing page, and put the landing page in front of people and say, do you want this? And, try to figure out how to get other people to adopt this, like the solution that we've created. And then once we've got people to adopt the solution we've created, we iterate on that. That's when I know we've got something. And what's interesting, Carlin, is like, I still do that today. Like it just doesn't stop. That's how we just keep creating products, or you take the same product and keep iterating on it in the market, and it just gets more and more momentum and is able to grow that way. And so, so customer discovery doesn't stop. And that's sort of how I do it. I'm all about listening to the customer, coming up with a solution, testing the solution, then usually trying to get them to pay for it. And then once I've got them to pay for it, I know I've got something. And then I try to get more people to pay for it.
I mean, I love what you said about kind of become the customer by you did the CMO thing, you started your own childcare. Was that always with the vision towards, I want to learn as much as possible about this sector so that I can innovate and improve?
Yeah, for sure. And it's lowest stakes that way too. Because you don't have to maintain anything. You're just starting from scratch. And so you can just throw it out. You can literally have an idea and throw it out within the middle of the day, So yeah, that's exactly right.
Right. Kind of talking about you, do you consider yourselves a tech platform, or how would you, what's the 5-second description of Wonderschool?
We consider ourselves a childcare marketplace.
Uh-huh.
And in that, it's a tech platform. We consider we're as much a tech platform as Airbnb is a tech platform. We have services that we provide to different types of customers, but yeah, we consider ourselves a tech platform.
Yeah, and the reason I asked that, Chris, is that I would say probably 75% of the student startups are tech platforms in some way or other. And I'm wondering if you can focus a little bit on some of the challenges and opportunities that you've seen throughout your growth and trajectory. Talk about, the early stages and how you actually built and scaled a tech platform that can either be very, very expensive or kind of self-resourced, and how you've approached those challenges.
Yeah, well, it depends on your skill set. If you're an engineer, it's a lot easier to self-resource. If you're not, you've got to pay for two people, sometimes three people. And that requires upfront capital, or, the benefit of being in college is you're typically usually pretty young. And so you don't really have a high personal burn rate, family, mortgage, cars. So that it makes it a little easier to not pay yourself a lot and buy yourself time. But yeah, tech platforms typically require a good amount of capital to get off the ground, because engineering and design resources are expensive. So early on for us, what we did was we raised money so that we could fund the development of the platform. We raised $2 million, then $4 million. But I am seeing in crypto and blockchain companies, those companies are able to generate revenue pretty quickly because they tokenize their platforms pretty early, and they are able to create liquidity that way. So that seems to be sort of the future, and that's making running a tech company even easier. Honestly, you can start raising money from your customers and from the market right out the gates, which is really cool. So that's something I'd be thinking of. Like, everyone I'm talking to right now is starting a Web3 company. It's pretty crazy. Like, everyone I was talking to, even people, yeah, Web3 companies are just so much more popular now, and the economics of them are pretty fascinating. And so I'm seeing a lot of that right now.
You guys have any blockchain functionality or
Not
vision for
yet,
what?
not yet, but you better know your blockchain strategy, right? Like, and I'm trying to figure it out right now, because it's interesting. Like, the market's changing so fast, so fast. It's, only 18 months ago was still getting laughed at, and now it's like everyone's got like a blockchain strategy. It's pretty interesting. And even people that I thought weren't into, because of the terrible things happening in Ukraine and Russia, and the ruble's just like falling at a pretty rapid rate, people are now seeing the benefits of Bitcoin, where you can have a digital asset that isn't pegged to some country, and that's changing people's understanding of the benefits of decentralized currencies. And now that all these Web3 companies are raising all this money, more and more people are entering it. So there's something we're thinking about, and we're talking about it as a leadership team. But we've got a lot of initiatives we're working on right now. It's hard for us to prioritize anything else.
Yeah. As we start to wind down here, if anyone has any more questions, please throw them in. But kind of focusing on now the student trajectory, kind of the young entrepreneurial pathway. Were there any early kind of resource hacks that you, or maybe even current, can think of that have been effective and beneficial to you in your growth, like the proliferation and growth of shared workspace, or in terms of having to scale while not leasing your own office space, or working remote, or kind of how have you been able to cut some corners that allowed for you to grow strategically?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest one is make sure you are around other entrepreneurs. You're not alone. Entrepreneurship is very lonely, and you need other people to motivate you around you. And when I started my company in 2000, I started startups in 2011, which is kind of crazy. And I was in an accelerator, 500 startups, and I was in a location. It was actually a pretty wild idea at the time. They forced us all to move to Mountain View, and there was 100 of us all starting a company. It was so cool. And yeah, imagine being in school, but instead of it being like you're studying for your exam, you're preparing for demo day. And so that's what we did. And that was cool. And that was amazing. And you know, I learned a lot from being around other entrepreneurs. And I would really encourage you all to do the same. And then second is I would like read a lot of books. You know, like Lean Startup is really good. That Steve Blank book around customer discovery. And I have no idea these are like 2012 books, 2011 books. I don't even know what's out now. But like read those books is sort of what I would say, because they're really helpful.
Yeah, I was going to ask on that point if you had any resources that you might recommend. I think the Lean Startup is an excellent one. I really like podcasts. I think the Y Combinator guys' How to Start a Startup 16-part series is tremendous. Do you have any other podcasts, books, series, content that you might recommend to folks?
No. Well, I liked Founders at Work, but again, I read that in 2009. So I feel old talking to you guys, by the way. Yeah, you know, Founders at Work is great. Lean Startup is great. What else have I found? Oh, you know, culture is really important, but that's like a thing you think about like after you've gotten some users. But that book by Ben Horowitz, You Are What You, I forgot the name of it, but it's Ben Horowitz's new book is really, really good. I found that to be really helpful around culture. So I'd recommend that too.
Yeah, I feel like you've mentioned it a few times now, kind of this like leaning in, surround yourself with other founders and connect and do the thing. It's something that I really preach. You know, you kind of you get what you put in, right? So here now we have this excellent opportunity. You've been generous with your time and your know-how. How do folks connect with people like you, right? With, all right, I want to access this successful individual's experience and capacity and know-how, but obviously knowing that they're very busy. You know, how do we kind of reach out to people in your space to learn from while not dominating their time and energy?
Well, sadly, I'm a very hard person to connect with. I have so little time. So I actually don't have time to connect with people, frankly. But if you talk to me in 2016, I had time. And so what you should be doing is looking for people who are starting their companies or just recently sold their companies, or people who have started companies in the past, and surround yourself with, like, once you're in the thick of it, you're growing, you're raising Series B, like no one has time. Time is, you don't even have enough time to do the things you're supposed to have time to do. So it's just like, no one has time. I schedule meetings and I cancel them all the time. So I just don't have time for anything. So, and like when people say that, it's really true. There's the level of demands and the number of people asking you for things, plus the fact that like you have to continue to be a founder and think about, because again, like I'm flying to New Mexico next week. And I'm going to spend the whole week with customers, right? But I also run a huge company. So it's like really hard to manage all that. So I'm actually the worst person to try to get time with. But what I would recommend is like try to find time with someone like myself when I'm earlier in the journey, or connect with people who are earlier in their journeys or who are doing it again, and they can be really valuable. I've talked to a number of founders that I admire who are starting again, right? And they're looking to think about like how, and those people are the best people to talk to.
Fantastic. And so on that note, you know, knowing that time is precious and a valuable resource to us all, maybe I'll kind of ask one of the last questions here and let maybe one or two more, if you guys have them in the chat, go in there. You've shared so many valuable tips and kind of growth ideas and opportunities. Do you have anything else that you might say, like, all right, if there was one piece, two pieces of advice that I might really say is like critical in order to succeed? Is there something that you might share with the group here?
Yeah, one unintuitive thing is like don't write code until you sort of know what you're building. Like like the Wonderschool story, you know, I was a CMO of that childcare program. I started a program. We didn't write our first line of code for till a year in. We didn't build shit. We just used as many no code solutions as possible. There's tons of them now. You can use Airtable, you can use Notion. There's like mobile app no code solutions. Just use as many of those as possible, even if you're an engineer. That was like a big learning for me. And I got that advice from one of our investors.
Amazing. Chris, thank you so much for your time. I'm certain everyone got a lot from that conversation. We're really grateful for you, and want to welcome you if you're ever around SDSU to stop by and shake some hands and say hello.
Yeah, yeah. Good luck, everyone. And I wish you all the best of luck in your journeys. Thanks for having me on, Jonathan. It was really fun.
Absolutely. All right, everyone, have a great weekend. Thank you, Chris.
Have a good weekend. Thank you.